Hello, everyone. I wanted to talk about disguising research sources and spinning phrases. And I'm going to begin by talking about some of my research practices from the past 10 years or more. So here's something from my book about Wikipedia in 2010. And at Wikipedia and in subsequent work on blogs, comment forums, and the like, I have always treated my sources as authors worthy of citation and reference. So here we can see footnote 2, I'm quoting someone from a emailing list. And I've always done that because I've always chosen to work in specifically public places where people are actually conversant with the norms and affordances of technology and would be willing to use pseudonyms if they thought that appropriate. It wouldn't be out of character or unusual for them to do that, and they would certainly know that that's an option available to them. However, more recently, I was thinking about advice forums on subreddit and elsewhere, but specifically subreddit. And I wondered if I should disguise my online sources by eliding usernames and altering quotations. Because advice about health and relationships are sensitive topics, even if shared in public via pseudonyms. Also, perhaps the people participating are minors or people who might be the subject of harassment. And so it made sense to give this a little bit more thought. And so I looked to the literature and I saw there were lots of different approaches and terms for the ways people approached this topic itself. There's the term anonymizing, as well as a bunch of others. I'll note that when it comes to anonymizing, I try not to use that term because it tends to be far too assured for cases in which people have been able to re-identify sources. And so I'm not using that one, and I'm not using a bunch of others for reasons that I discuss more fully elsewhere, but I am going to be following Bruckman's use of the word disguise. So Bruckman distinguishes between different types of disguise. There's the light, where you might identify the forum but change the usernames and quote folks. And there's heavy, so you might actually obfuscate by introducing false details. You're not doing any verbatim quotations. And it means that someone deliberately looking to locate that source is going to have a difficult time doing so. And moderate falls somewhere in between. And in that literature, you can also find examples of researchers and journalists being able to locate other researcher sources. So even as far back as the mid-90s, King faulted Finn and Levitt for disguising sources' names, but not the forums that the users were discussing on and the time of their posts. So this made it very easy to locate those sources. Zimmer critiqued some people for creating a data set that could be useful to lots of researchers of Facebook information, but it'd be very difficult to properly anonymize that data. A journalist reported that a similar problem existed for an AOL data set. And in 2015, another journalist, also at the New York Times, wanted to speak to a subject in a research report and decided, well, they could probably figure it out and locate them on their own. And they actually managed to do that, which was a little bit embarrassing for the researcher. So what was my method? I decided to look at research reports. I already had a couple in hand of recent reports. So I looked for more of on Reddit, using terms like privacy, verbatim, fabrication, and AIR guidelines. I found ultimately 3 reports that had verbatim quotations from Reddit and 3 that reworded phrases they found on Reddit. And then I attempted to locate those actual posts or comments on Reddit. And I did that by way of 3 search indexes. I think most people will immediately turn to Google, but Reddit also does a very good job of finding quotes in posts, but not comments. They don't make that available. And more intriguingly, there is a service known as PushShift, and there is a human interface available for it called RedditSearch. And they do a fairly extensive and amazing job of indexing Reddit and giving you very sophisticated facets of search and an API. And then finally, I tried to speak to the authors of the 6 research reports. 3 of them agreed to speak to me, and we spoke about their practice, rationale, influences, and any thoughts they had about this work. And though I use public research reports and their own Reddit sources in my analysis, so we could say all of this is public, I don't identify or quote any of this myself. My intention is not to call anyone out or embarrassing people. I wanted to be able to speak with researchers and have them talk about their experiences in frank and honest ways. So my analysis. So what did I find? When it comes to locating researchers' sources on Reddit, Reddit is excellent at finding verbatim content from posts, but not comments. Google can search because it indexes posts and comments and was good for non-exact, non-quoted searches. So it could find, if a word or two was off, maybe it was replaced by a synonym or there was some punctuation, it was okay at that. And then RedditSearch and push shift, they were the most potent tool enabling sophisticated searches. And more importantly, push shift and other services related and unrelated also keep copies of messages that might have since been deleted on Reddit. In terms of the efficacy of the disguise, again, I divided my research reports that I was studying into two categories, those that used verbatim quotes and those that used reworded quotes, but they all had some degree of disguise, from none to a significant amount. For instance, report V1 that used verbatim phrases, they had 18 quotations. I was able to find 17 of those. But one of the odd things is the scholar said that they were only using throwaway accounts, one-time pseudonymous accounts, but for some reason, their paper included non-throwaway accounts. And I think maybe this was a problem during data collection, perhaps. I did not get to speak to this researcher because maybe they just searched for people who mentioned throwaway accounts in their posts. And the instances that I found in their quotes were people saying, I'm not going to use my throwaway account for this. I should just be honest and say this frankly. Intriguingly, those people then subsequently went on to delete those messages I found. V2, 17 sources, I found 15 of them. Again, they didn't account for the fact that some of the sources they were using ended up being deleted by their authors. And then V3, 6 sources, I found 6 of them. Again, you might think that's intentional, but when you look at the description of their practice, it's actually inconsistent with what they did. And then when it came to the folks that employed higher levels of disguise by rewording phrases, R1, intriguingly, had a very rich ethnographic portrayal of their topic, but I can only find 2 possible quotes that actually related or were from Reddit. Most of their quotes were actually from interviews with people. And of course, those aren't indexed by Google because those are confidential between the interviewer and the interviewee. And I thought this was a very privacy protective and enhancing approach that I hadn't really properly thought about. R2, they rephrased their sources, but I was able to find all of them because they mentioned the thread titles in their report, and then it wasn't that hard to find the specific comment or post. And then R3, I think, had the most rigorous approach. They reworded 8 of their Reddit quotes. I was not able to identify any of them. And they told me that they actually not only reworded them, but then tested them in Google and see if they could locate it themselves. So as an ethical practice, they are doing what I was doing, and it was very effective. Now, so we might ask, how can we improve disguise? Given some of those failings and limitations, can we make it easier for researchers to do what they do? And could we actually automate it? And there are a couple of websites that will take prose and change them. They're called spinners. And typically these are used for search engine optimizations and other little bit shady practices and some more significant practices where you take some content, like an essay, perhaps it's yours, perhaps you've ripped it off from elsewhere, you throw it into the spinner, and it will generate, via synonym substitutions and other sort of changes, hundreds, if not thousands of variations that will all be thought to be unique. And you can build up this content farm and put advertisements on it and make money. So there's Spin Rewriter, there's also Word AI. And what I would like you to do as part of this workshop, if you have 10 to 15 minutes, is go to reagle.org/disguise. And there you'll see a 2-page Google form. The first page is a consent form, so you can read through that. And then at the bottom, you can click I agree. And then there's two very simple exercises. The first is I'm going to ask you, as a potential ethnographer or someone who might do this kind of obfuscation, to look at this quotation. She has her boundaries for a reason. And I'm asking you to disguise or FUD or obfuscate this quotation to the degree that you think it will not be discoverable via search engine while maximizing fidelity to the original, the thing that you see here. And then I also have three little examples where I'm going to ask you to distinguish between here's the original, luckily a few days ago, and then we have two spun phrases, fortunately a few days ago, fortunately a couple of days back. And I would like you to tell me if you think one of those is better than the other with respect to the degree to which it's changed and its fidelity, or whether you think it's the same. It shouldn't take you very long, but I will appreciate it greatly if you're able to do that. Thank you.